Hello everyone, this is XTryGuy9. This is going to be a video that I hope is very quick, but could end up being long, that is going to be discussing the Thief changes as far as traits go that were announced on the recent ArenaNet livestream. A little background on why I'm making this video. I'm primarily a PvX player. In PvE, I main Guardian, but none of the trait changes really bother me about Guardian. However, in PvP and for roaming, I play Thief, and a lot of things in their changes bother me. There are good things that they're changing, but overall, there's some things they're doing to the class that I really do not agree with, and I kind of wanted to just talk about why that is, because I know they're looking for feedback, and this is going to be my way to give that feedback. So, to start off, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of background on what our current meta builds are, because maybe you don't play Thief and you're unaware, so I'm hoping that showing you the current builds will make you understand why I'm very fearful going forward after these changes. So this is probably the primary build that's used for roaming and PvP currently. It's the dagger pistol build. It's basically dagger, pistol, short bow, and then some stealth skills and stuff like that. It's a little different in PvP and roaming, but the general concept is still the same. It's a line that you generally, for most people, will go into Shadow Arts and either critical strikes or deadly arts. There is a variant of this that goes fully into deadly arts and uses panic strike, but critical strikes or deadly arts is usually the standard. But the one thing that remains the same is Shadow Arts. So generally in minor, you have Last Refuge, which is a blinding powder when your health reaches a certain threshold, which is basically a stealth when you get to 25%. You have Shadow's Embrace, which removes one condition every 3 seconds while in stealth. You have Meld with Shadows, stealth skills last longer. You have Gain Initiative when you enter stealth, which is 2 initiative. You have Gain Might when you gain stealth, which ticks, say you put an SR down or Heartseeker, every time the stealth buff rolls over a certain amount of seconds, you regain the might. And then you have Shadow's Rejuvenation, which is arguably the strongest trait in the line. Regenerate health while in stealth at 1 second intervals, 293 health. So very powerful if you stealth up a lot, which this spec has a very good chance of doing. In acrobatics, you have gain swiftness upon dodging and move faster while in stealth. So while you're stealthing and doing all these things already, conditions removed, gaining initiative, regenerating health, you also move faster, which is good because in stealth normally you move slower. And then in critical strikes, just for this, I'll show this. Critical hit chance is increased while your health is above 90%. Side strike, gain bonus crit when striking a foe from behind to the side. This is because you go for backstabs out of stealth, and you have 1 extra crit for that. Critical hits have a bonus chance to restore initiative, so 50% chance you just randomly gain an initiative when you crit. Gain quickness on critical hit, 25% chance, gain some quickness, just helps finish people off or do a lot of damage very quickly. Damage is increased when your current initiative is over the threshold of 6. And deal extra damage when your target is below the health threshold. This trait is very important for later Executioner, so you get 20% damage increase while the target is below 50% health. That's our dagger pistol build. There are some variants and utilities and stuff that you can make this even stronger, but that is the general build that is currently on Meta Battle. Then we have Sword Dagger. Sword Dagger is basically if dagger pistol is all about stealth, then SD is all about not stealth for the most part. So you can see a very different trait setup. In Deadly Arts, you take Serpent's Touch and Mug. Mug is probably the strongest trait in Deadly Arts currently for just general builds. You deal damage and gain life while stealing. It cannot critically hit. It used to be able to, doesn't anymore. Not really relevant, but it has a very strong heal of almost 2,000 health. The damage is pretty good too. But here's the big change. Instead of Shadow Arts, we take Acrobatics in this build. So we get the Swiftness upon dodging, We get dodging returns some of the endurance used, which is very powerful. Every time you dodge, you just gain 15 back, so you can kind of get a quarter, maybe a little less than half of your dodge back. So you can dodge more frequently, and then damage is increased while endurance is not full, so it's very appealing to be constantly dodging and stuff because you're going to do more damage if your endurance bar isn't full. In the sword dagger build, we take gain might whenever we dodge, so in addition to swiftness, we're also gaining might. We have vigor on using healing skills, so when we're using withdraw, which is on a relatively short cooldown, we'll get vigor, which helps us dodge more, which helps us build might more, which helps us gain swiftness more. You can kind of see how the line works with itself. And then we have pain response, which is gain regen and remove conditions, which are bleeding, burning, poisoned, when we're struck below 75% on a 30-second cooldown. And then this line, which will be a theme going forward for the other builds, and really is probably the line that changes the least going into the new changes, is trickery. So we have stealing gives initiative, increases the maximum initiative by 3, which is very good, and lead attacks increase damage per initiative. So when your initiative is high, you do more damage. These traits really never change unless you're running a Condi build, then the final Grandmaster trait changes, but in general you're taking Thrill of the Crime, so when you steal, you and your allies within a 360 radius gain Fury, Might, and Swiftness for 10 seconds, which is pretty long duration for those particular boons. We have Bountiful Theft, where when we steal, we grant all allies and ourselves Vigor, and rip 2 boons and grant them to our allies and ourselves as well. Very powerful trait. And then Sleight of Hand, which is probably the strongest trait in this line. Stealing dazes your target and reduces the recharge of steel by 20%. I say this is the strongest because this is basically an interrupt, and interrupts are very powerful on Thief. If we know our opponent's skills, we can interrupt very key skills just by having a well-timed steal, and it makes all the difference. Next is the PD Condi Roamer. This is considered pretty much a scumbag thief build. No one really likes the people who run this build because it is very cheesy. The general concept is abuse Shadow Arts. So as you can see, same exact traits as last time. Shadow's Embrace, removes conditions, the gain initiative, the healing. Still want to move faster in stealth. This is a slight difference. When we're running Condi builds, we want to leave caltrops behind when we dodge, which bleed and cripple our opponents. In addition to Bewildering Ambush, which is 5 stacks of confusion when we steal instead of dazing. Basically, this build is all about we use Cloak and Dagger, we use our heal skill, we use any stealth we can acquire to get access to our unload in stealth on pistol main hand, which is basically like a ton of bleed stacks. So we eventually just bleed the opponent to death and they can't do anything about it because we're constantly stealthing. So that's why this build is very frowned upon. Not a lot of people like it. And finally, the last, I would say, somewhat meta roaming build is Dagger Dagger. Dagger Dagger can be played Condi or Power, but generally it's more used as a power build, and it's kind of used as kind of a gimmicky burst build. You actually sometimes go more offensive than this. You sometimes go 6 in Deadly Arts, 6 in Critical Strikes, and then 2 in Shadow Arts if you want like huge burst potential, like the one-shot. But generally, you need some Shadow Arts if you're going to roam with such a glassy spec. So, gain Might when activating a Signet. This is, again, make the burst higher because you're running 2 Signets. Gain Initiative when activating a Signet and reduces recharge, again, so we can do things more often. And hitting Killer, gain bonus critical hit when it sells, so we have a 100% crit chance increase. But you'll notice, Shadow Arts, not much has changed here other than this. Gain Stealth blinds foes. So really, I see this as interchangeable with the other trait where we gain Initiative. Putting a blind on someone and gaining Initiative for ourselves is essentially the same thing. And I say that because when you blind someone, it makes them miss. Whereas if we're gaining Initiative, we essentially get to use that initiative to re-stealth, and it's a pseudo blind because they don't know where we are anymore. And then we have Mug and Deadly Arts. So those are our current meta builds. I have there's variations of them and everything. I myself use a different variant of Dagger Pistol for quite a while now that doesn't use any Shadow Arts. It actually goes into Acrobatics and Deadly Arts. So, and I've been using that build for a while. But my point is that there's a lot of variations on these builds. These are just the current ones that are listed on the site, but there are tons of variations. Some go more into Shadow Arts, some go less into Shadow Arts. It's all down to preference. But now I want to go into the trait changes that are going to be going through and why I'm really scared for what direction Thief is going. And again, this is going to be my thoughts on just Thief power level. I know other classes' power levels are changing. They're either going up, going down, no one really knows. But in terms of just Thief, I'm going to say what I think is happening with our class in particular. So we have Deadly Arts. So our minor trait is Stealing inflicts poison, which our root did, and attacks while in downed state apply poison. So basically they just rolled the really crappy down state skill into here. So really nothing's changing. The poison lasts a really long time from this, so it's doing the same thing it used to. Next is Lotus Poison. Weaken targets when you poison them. This works very well because the third auto attack on Dagger is a poison, and as well as our Steal from the first minor trait. So basically we're putting weakness on people essentially every 10 seconds if we want to. And weakness is very strong against opponents because it makes them dodge less and have a fumble chance, which is really annoying. And then our third minor trait is Exposed Weakness. Deal more damage if your target has a condition. If you go into Deadly Arts, this is something that was already there. It was a bit more clunky before, so they basically just made it, if the target has a condition, we do more damage. Which, as you could see, we have lots of ways to apply conditions. So chances are this is going to be activating quite often if you go into Deadly Arts. In Adept, we have Dagger Training. Dagger damage is increased to poison foes. This is actually a tooltip error they said on stream. What Dagger Training actually does is your dagger attacks have an increased chance to inflict poison or something along those lines. They rolled the 5% damage increase in baseline. So this is actually just poisoning foes more often. That's what it's actually going to do. Then you have Mug. Hasn't really changed. Deal damage and gain life when stealing. So it's still probably the best option in this line. And then you have this one, which is very interesting. I think this is going to make for some possible Trapper builds for Thief. There are some right now, but they're not quite as good. But it's Trapper's Respite. Drop a Needle Trap when you use a healing skill on a 10-second recharge. So with this, you could kind of make, because Withdraw is on such a short cooldown, you could essentially have a trap to lay every single time Withdraw is off cooldown. So that gives us an option we never really had before, because traps historically are a bit clunky. But if it's just immediately dropping when we heal, that's actually really powerful if people are chasing us. And then in the Master line, we have Resourceful Trapper. Stealing reduces the cooldown of currently recharging traps by 10 seconds. So if you have a trap on cooldown, recharge is reduced by a flat 10 seconds. And like I said, this is lending itself to a Trapper build that really hasn't quite taken off in the current state of the game because they're really clunky to use. So it's cool. Here's the first place where I don't really understand where they're going. We have Panic Strike moving down to a Master line. I don't know why this is. They're upping, they have it on a 20-second recharge, and the immob duration is going down, but in my opinion, Panic Strike is something that like could define a build. It is that freaking good. You'll see why they had to move it down when we get to Grandmaster, but I don't understand their logic because this is a very powerful trait, and just giving us access to this plus some of the ones they put into Grandmaster is absolutely absurd in my mind. Essentially, how Panic Strike works is, as you can see, when your opponent is under 50%, you just immobilize them when you attack them. And immobilizes are very strong. If you hit someone with this and they're in the air for whatever reason, it's basically a 2.5-second stun. Currently, the immob is a bit higher, I think, on live, so they are reducing it, but it's still insane how good this trait is. Revealed training is the final master. This also used to be a grandmaster trait, and they are reducing it to a master. Gain extra power while you are revealed. This is good for builds that stealth up in short durations and then attack, because you have a bonus 200 power when you have the revealed debuff on you, which essentially means you can't re-stealth. This was more used in PvE. I don't think it was ever used for any builds in PvP. I could be wrong on that, but you know, if it's a master trait and it's between that and Panic Strike, honestly, it could be pretty close depending on the type of build you're playing. If you are playing a more aggressive style of dagger pistol where you're stealthing and then you're just immediately like jumping on someone, 200 extra power on those attacks is really good. So I'm a little bit, I don't know. Those two traits, Panic Strike and Reveal Training, a little too strong for in my opinion, for Master, but we'll see what happens. Then we have Grandmaster and Deadly Arts. We have Potent Poison, which increases poison duration, and poison deals increased damage. So, duration increase, 33% longer poison. This is a big deal, because poison is changing to a stacking condition. So having extra duration is actually a good thing, because the more stacks you lay, the more it's basically going to up its duration, and then if it's also doing 50% more damage on top of that, the poison damage gets out of control very fast, especially if you take things in the Adept like Dagger Training, which is going to have like more poison on auto attacks, and then you have your Steel, which is applying poison, then you have Short Bow, which is applying poison with the field. You could see poison gets very strong very fast on Thief if it's a stacking and it's lasting and doing more damage. Then we have Improvisation. This trait changed a little bit from its current functionality on live. Currently, when you steal a random skill category, so that's tricks, deception, signets, venoms, one of those just randomly recharges fully. So if you use all your utilities and then you steal, chances are one of them is going to recharge just randomly, which could be a stun break, it could be a venom. You can see it's very good. And currently it says bundle items do 10% more damage. Well, the issue with that is that none of our stolen items count as bundles currently on live, so unless we're in like PvE and using Fiery Greatsword or Ice Bow, that damage increase was never relevant. So what they're changing is that not only are our bundle items, our stolen items, going to be counted with this 10% damage increase, which all the numbers on those will most likely go down because of this, but we can use those stolen items twice. This is a brand new functionality that is going to completely, in my opinion, wreck some matchups for Thief, but it's also going to be just very interesting. So say you steal from a Mesmer, they give you a glob of ectoplasm that you essentially get every boon in the game on you. Well, now you can get every boon on the game on you twice. So that's like 2 Aegises on Thief and a bunch of short duration of every other boon. That's pretty powerful. But then you have matchups like Warrior, where you have the whirling spin, where if you're playing Dagger Pistol, essentially that means you can Blinding Powder and then spin and have the constant blinding bolts. And you can do that to the Warrior twice. And Warriors have very, very short, like long attack animations in certain builds. So this could essentially shut down a Warrior for about 5 to 7 seconds. Just, they can't do anything because they're blind. That's insane to me. So I'm really scared for the power of that in certain matchups. In others, it's not as crazy. Like, oh, and you steal from an Elementalist. Oh, you hit him with a chill thing. Well, you hit them with that twice, it's still just a chill. They're probably going to Condi cleanse it off anyway. So it's not going to affect every matchup, but there are certain matchups where improvisation just becomes ridiculous. Then this is one I I can't really figure out in my head why they chose to do this. They moved Executioner from critical strikes up to deadly arts. And Executioner seemingly hasn't changed. Damage increased 20% while target is below 50%. Now, this seems like, oh, well, if this line's all about daggers, then that makes sense, because now we get to do more stuff with more damage. Just, it makes sense. This is a power line for the most part. Now it's more power. Well, the issue with that is that when you had things like Revealed Training and Panic Strike on top of Executioner, yeah, Thief gets a little out of control, because being immobed or having 200 extra power while you're beating on someone under 50% health, the damage you're outputting and they can't really do anything about it, most cases, is not very good. I'm really worried about how much power Executioner holds just because of the other things that are in this line already. So, Deadly Arts on the whole, I would say, got very, very strong. I think most times you're going to see people taking Mugs still in Adept, because just dealing damage and healing is so powerful on Steel. And in Master, like I said, probably a toss-up between Panic Strike and Revealed Training. I think they're almost equivalent in terms of what they do. Whether the person's immobed or whether you have 200 more power behind you, it's not really going to change the outcome. You're doing a lot of damage to someone very fast. And then in Grandmaster, it's probably between Improvisation and Executioner. A lot of people are probably going to go Executioner. Personally, I'll probably go for Improvisation, because I currently don't even use Executioner anyway, and I don't feel the need for it. And I like Improvisation as a skill. Having a random skill recharge sounds bad, but at the same time, if that's one of my stun breaks, or if that's like my Bazzy Venom, that's just another cooldown for me. It's another tool for me to use during the fight. So overall, Deadly Arts, pretty darn good now. It was already good, but it's even better now. Next up is Critical Strikes. So we have, in the minors, we have Keen Observer. Critical hit chance is increased by 5% when you're above 90%. Didn't change. Unrelenting Strikes, critical hit damage is increased against foes whose health is below threshold. This is an interesting one. So if foes are underneath 33%, we do more critical hit damage, so essentially higher ferocity, and we seemingly gain might. I don't know if the tooltip is just that bugged or what's going to happen, but it seems pretty good. Like, gaining extra might, or even just if it isn't might, even if it's just critical hit damage, that's a pretty big deal. That's a good finishing power that Thief not always has access to. And then we have First Strikes, which is critical damage is increased while your current initiative is over the threshold. So this is essentially the same thing, gaining damage when initiative is above 3, or 6 rather. So not too much has changed in terms of that. And then we have Adept. Side Strike didn't change at all, still gaining bonus crit chance when behind or the side. Signets of Power, gain might when activating a signet, and signet recharge is reduced. So basically they just rolled the signet things into one, so we're gaining 5 might and the signet recharge is reduced. And then combo critical chance, dual wield skills have increased critical hit chance, just 5% bonus critical hit chance on dual skills. I think currently the dual skill thing is 5% increased damage, so now they're making it higher crit for those instead. So it's a thing, I guess. It's damage or critical hit chance. It's not really going to change much. Then in Master, we have critical hits have a chance to cause vulnerability. This hasn't really changed. We have Practice Tolerance, gain vitality based on precision. This is cool because they're upping the vitality to precision, like, relatability thing from 7% to 10%, so it's even more health from building precision, which is pretty cool as a very squishy class, to be able to build a stat we want for offense, like crit chance, and then be gaining health because of that. So that's really powerful. And then we have Ankle Shots. This one's kind of interesting. Critical hits with pistols have a chance to cripple foes, and pistol strikes deal increased damage to crippled foes. So basically, it synergizes with itself. You're going to be crippling foes, 60% chance, and then you're going to have a 10% damage increase on those foes. So if you do something like unload, every single one of those shots, you have a 60% chance, if it crits, to cripple them, and then all shots after that are going to do 10% increased damage. So if you hit a crit early and unload, the damage is going to be crazy. So pretty cool for a pistol trait. And then in Grandmaster we have Ricochet, which no one really picks on live, but maybe it'll be in a pistol build after this. Pistol shots have a chance to bounce to an additional target, and pistol range is increased. So this didn't really change. Pistol shots have a 50% chance to bounce, and then you have 150 extra range. So it's pigeonholed into a pistol build for the most part. You have Hidden Killer, didn't change. You get a 100% crit chance out of stealth. And then Invigorating Precision, you're healed for a percentage of outgoing critical hit damage. So 15% of all damage you do that are crits, you get healed. Currently, I think that trait's very underwhelming. So probably because they removed Executioner from this line, Hidden Killer is now the best trait for most Thief builds that go into crit strikes. But we'll have to see. Next up we have Shadow Arts. Oh, Shadow Arts. So this is the line that I am the most worried about because I already do not like this line. This line is way too powerful on live, in my opinion. More so after these changes if numbers do not change. So, in Minor, you have Last Refuge, 25% threshold. We stealth because we cast Blinding Powder, which blinds all targets around us. That's fine, didn't change. Meld with Shadows, stealth skills last longer. That's fine, didn't change. Resilience of Shadows is now a minor. Stealth effects that you apply reduce incoming attack damage by 50%. This is ridiculous. This was a Grandmaster Shadow Arts trait, and now it has been given to us as a minor trait. I can almost guarantee 50% is not the final number on that, because if they gave us 50% damage reduction while in stealth as a minor, we would be basically unkillable under most circumstances in fair fights. There is zero chance in my mind that this goes into the game with a 50% damage reduction. This would be completely imbalanced if it was like that. But, on to the Adepts. Stealth yourself and your target when reviving an ally, you revive allies faster. Kinda cool, but it's a gimmicky revive trait, so not many people are going to take it unless you're doing like the stealth thief build, which not many people do. Concealed Defeat creates smoke screen when downed. Deception abilities recharge faster. So basically this is a combination of a couple traits. Essentially we just drop a smoke screen, which blocks projectiles and blinds foes that enter it, and it's a smoke field, and it's unblockable, so they're gonna get blind if they walk through it. And then randomly deception abilities recharge faster. So, kinda cool, but I don't know, probably not taken very often. And then you have this, which hasn't changed. Shadow's Embrace. Remove conditions periodically while in stealth. So we lose one condition every 3 seconds. Still as strong as ever, and it's in the Adept line still. Then into the Masters. We have Shadow Protector. When you grant stealth to an ally, they gain regeneration. This effect does not trigger if your ally already has regeneration. So basically this does nothing because it's not very good. It's just regeneration. Blinding Powder. Descent of Shadows. Release Blinding Powder when you steal or take fall damage. You take less damage from falling. So this didn't really change too much. It's essentially the fall damage trait with the caveat that now when we steal, we release Blinding Powder. So it's essentially the way that they put... There used to be a trait that would give us stealth when we steal, so they kind of just rolled that in with the fall damage trait. So it's kind of cool as an option. We kind of will get extra stealth mechanics from falling and stealing. This is probably going to end up being the optimal one to take for Shadow Arts builds, just because stealing, getting an extra Blinding Powder is pretty good. And then leeching venoms. Gain might when activating a venom. Siphon life from foes when triggering a venom. This can only occur once per strike. So, yeah. This is basically the same, as far as I know. You're just gaining life when you attack people and gaining might when you activate venoms. So, it's for venom builds. Then into Grandmaster. Here is where you can start to see why I'm worried. Cloaked in Shadow, gaining stealth blinds foes. This I agree with. This was way too good to be a master trait. So I'm pretty happy with this. This being in a Grandmaster, I think this is a good enough thing to be called build defining. Gaining stealth blinding people is very powerful, and I think it is worth Grandmaster. Shadow's Rejuvenation. Regenerate health and initiative while in stealth. I have no idea what they're actually thinking with this. We got our healing still, and then they're just like, you know what? Have some initiative too. It's only one initiative every 3 seconds, but it matters, guys. It matters. Any initiative regeneration mechanic, it matters when you're playing a stealth build. And then Venomous Aura. When you use a Venom skill, you apply the effects to all nearby allies as well. Venom recharges are reduced. So this is your Venom share, and the Life Siphon cooldown maybe has something that it does, which is back in here, I think. So I don't know. Maybe there's some synergy there that isn't very well represented in the tooltip. But I do want to just pause on this line for a moment, because this line on live, as I said, is very, very strong. It's used in several of the meta builds, and they're making it stronger. And I really don't agree with that, because Shadow Arts, as it stands on live, is a build that can easily 1v1 people, and even 1vx people. This is a style of game where it's very tedious for opponents, and it's very strong for the thief, because basically the opponent will spend the entire fight either getting backstabbed or shot with a pistol out of stealth, and then before they can even react, the thief is going to disappear into stealth again. This is really, really bad for the balance of the game, because in addition to things they already had, like blinding powder when we reached 25% and our stealth lasting longer, they were just like, you know what, that Grandmaster that no one really picked because it was a Grandmaster, let's just give that to them as a minor trait. So now we have crazy damage reduction while in stealth. So even if our opponent manages to know where we are in stealth, like they track us well because they have good game sense, it doesn't matter because they're going to be doing a lot less damage to us. And while we're stealth, we're going to be removing conditions, we're going to be healing, we're going to be gaining initiative. I don't see how this can possibly be balanced. They need to do changes to how stealth works. I don't know if that's upping the reveal timer up to 4 seconds like it is in PvP. I don't know if it's just changing a lot of these numbers and making them less extreme, but something needs to change in this line. This line, as it stands, is still way too strong. I do not like builds that use this trait line because I feel it takes away from the engagement of a fight. When I am in a fight as a thief, I like being active. I like being on top of my opponent, doing damage. I don't like the people who just hide and wait in stealth. It's like, oh no, I got low. I'll just go into stealth, and I can stay in stealth because of the class, all the tools that the class has for 10 seconds, and I'll just heal, I'll remove all the conditions they put on me, I'll just reset the fight. This is a very boring trend for the class. I don't like the fact that this is a concept that is available. I like stealth in certain situations like PvE, and certain situations in PvP, like, oh, my friend went down, I need to shadow refuge them. Stealth is a good tool, but it should stay that. It should stay a tool. It shouldn't be, oh, I get all of these things in stealth, so I'm just going to stay in stealth and I'll just win the fight because I can stealth more than my opponent. I don't like stealth being a free win card. I want stealth to be something that takes skill in some way, or takes some mental power to play. I don't like how mindless it is and how easy it is to gain access to all of these things for free. But that is my rant on Shadow Arts. I am very opposed to this line, so that is probably going to be the rantiest you will hear me. Then we'll go into acrobatics. Acrobatics actually changed quite heavily, and I think it's for the better overall. If Shadow Arts got even stupider, I think acrobatics got even cooler, because acrobatics, as it stands now, was always kind of the more active line. So it's like, oh, you're going to be rolling a lot. You're going to be like up in your opponent's face because you have to stay quick on your feet. And they're basically making that playstyle even stronger if you're a good player. And I say if you're a good player because of how they managed to do it. So let's look at the minors. We have Expeditious Dodger, gain swiftness upon dodging. So that hasn't changed. Feline Grace. This changed. So gain vigor upon successfully evading an attack. And if you'll notice, it's a short duration vigor, but it's 120% endurance regen. And that is because of our new third minor. The effects of vigor on you are enhanced by 20%. So basically, what they did is instead of just returning a flat 15 endurance to us when we dodge, we're now going to be gaining increased vigor, but it's under the caveat of successfully evading an attack. That means if you just dodge, you're not going to get your endurance back. If you want to keep dodging by gaining this increased power vigor, you have to successfully dodge an attack. It has to say evade when you dodge. If it doesn't say evade, you don't get the vigor. This is very, very cool because it adds a dynamic to acrobatics that makes the line very, very skill-based. So if Shadow Arts is like the mindless one where, oh, I just stealth up and then I gain all this stuff, acrobatics is the opposite. Acrobatics is like, oh man, I just evaded that attack, and because I evaded that attack, stuff happens good for me. So I played well, so I get rewarded for playing well. And I really, really like that. So Adept, we have Fleet Shadow, move faster while in stealth. This didn't change. I always thought it was kind of weird that it's in acrobatics, but whatever, it's a thing. Vigorous Recovery, gain vigor when using a healing skill. This is the same, but now because of the third minor, we're getting 120% endurance regen for 5 seconds. So this is very, very good. Still very powerful with Withdraw. And then Pain Response, which used to be a Grandmaster, is coming all the way down to an Adept. So this is actually interesting because Vigorous Recovery and Pain Response is actually a meaningful choice because Vigor is very powerful now. So, but also is losing conditions and gaining regen. So I'm very curious to see what people end up taking for this, because I think it's actually a very big choice. Do you want the Condi removal or do you want the extra dodges? It's a good choice. Like, it's a meaningful choice that people have to make. Okay, Master Traits. Guarded Initiation. This is a new trait that I think is very cool. Gain resistance when striking an enemy while your health is full. So when you are at 100% health, you gain resistance when you attack someone. So it's basically like if you engage on someone, you get 5 seconds where conditions are not going to tick on you. So they can instantly Condi bomb you, but for those 5 seconds, you are not going to feel that at all. Like, whatever they do to try to stop your immediate killing of them isn't going to matter for 5 seconds. And then after those 5 seconds, you're probably going to need, hopefully, have gotten away from them. So it's basically just like you go in, you do what you have to, and then you get out before the resistance ends. Next up is Swindler's Equilibrium. This is another new trait. Successfully evading an attack while wielding a sword recharges steel by a static amount, which currently is 1 second. So if you think about it, now we have two things. So the primary build that used acrobatics was sword dagger. So naturally, you will probably be wielding a sword if you're using the acrobatics line. So now, not only are you dodging, and it's again successfully evading. So when you successfully evade, and you see the word evade, you're gaining vigor from the minor trait, and now if you're wielding a sword, your steel cooldown is going to go down by 1. This is a pretty big deal because The more often you can steal, the more often you have access to things like if you're running the trickery line, you can have, oh, that's a daze, or oh, that's poison weakness if you're running deadly arts along with this. So this is very, very strong because you're going to be stealing much more often. But it's gated behind the successfully evading part, so it still has a lot of skill behind it. Good players will recharge their steal very quickly, whereas bad players will probably not recharge their steal as quickly. Then you have hard to catch. This changed quite a bit, but I think it's for the better. Currently hard to catch is something along the lines of when you get CC'd, you teleport away and gain swiftness, or something like that. Except the teleport is completely random where it puts you, and you can't really control it in any way. So it's not very good on live, in my opinion. However, this version of it is very, very good. When you are disabled in any of those ways, so basically any disable in the game, you break that stun, and then you gain 100% of your endurance back. So let's say a warrior engages on you, they manage to hit you with one of their CCs, like with a hammer. Well, usually the hammer warriors will chain all their CCs in sequence. Well, with this, basically, as long as it's been 30 seconds, because it can only proc once every 30 seconds, as long as this procs, because let's be honest, if a warrior hit you with a hammer as a thief, you probably ran out of dodges or for some reason. So now this basically fully recharges your endurance and breaks the stun for you, so you don't get CC chained because you'll just dodge away. I think again, this master line, this is probably the best line in the acrobatics tree now. And I'm really curious what people will pick, because all three of these options are really, really, really good. Stealing more is good. Resistance is good. Stun break and endurance regen, like complete fill, very good. So I'm curious. This is this is a meaningful choice that the players will have to make. This line so far is probably my favorite of the stuff they changed, because I think almost all of the choices in it are very good. And then in Grandmaster, probably the most lackluster of the acrobatics line, but they will all probably have their use in some builds. So you have Assassin's Reward, heal yourself whenever you use a skill that uses initiative, and heal yourself for each point of initiative spent. So basically, you spend initiative, you get healed. It's not very crazy or anything, it's just you get healed when you spend initiative, which as a thief, you spend a lot of initiative, so it works. Quick Pockets, gain initiative on swapping weapons while in combat, so you gain initiative when you swap weapons. So if you need to like quickly go to shortbow, you instantly have enough initiative to do an evade on your shortbow if you were completely out of initiative. So, or if you're completely out of initiative on your shortbow and you switch, oh, now you have enough for a Heartseeker. So there are situations you could think of where this is good, but overall it's probably the weakest of the three. And then Don't Stop. This is a new trait. Periodically evade projectile attacks while under the effects of swiftness. Well, just because of how this line is structured, you're going to have swiftness every time you dodge, and if you're running pack runes, you'll have swiftness. So the odds of just randomly evading projectiles are pretty strong. The problem with this is we don't know specifically how this is going to work. It says periodically evade projectile attacks. Well, does that mean, oh, you evade one attack? So in the entire chain of a rapid fire from a ranger, you'll evade one of those arrows? Or is it like, oh, it works like a minor distortion effect for ranged projectiles once it activates? So like, oh, shoot, I got shot. Oh, but the trait procced, so that whole rapid fire for like 2 or 3 seconds just doesn't hit me. We don't really know. It's probably going to be something like one arrow or one projectile, but nonetheless, every little bit helps when you're trying to avoid damage as a thief. So acrobatics, really cool, really skill-based. I think this is probably going to be the top thief players' best choice, because they are going to be the ones that can get all these extra bonuses from successfully evading things. This is going to be the line they're going to like, because it's very, very powerful in a lot of ways. And then finally we have Trickery. So Trickery is kind of the same, Some things changed, but let's go through it. In the minor, we have Kleptomaniac. Stealing gives initiative, not to change. Preparedness increases max initiative by 3, didn't change. Lead attacks. So, this changed a little bit. Increases damage per initiative, and steal recharges faster. So what they did is they took half of this line, which lets us, and they rolled it in baseline. So steal naturally has a lower cooldown, and then speccing into this reduces the recharge of steal further. So they basically just rolled it into one to make it easier. But they also gave us a little bit of a baseline reduction in steal time because we don't have the bonuses from what we used to having gone into this line. So we have uncatchable, leave behind caltrops when you dodge. Not much change there, other than the fact that it actually casts caltrops, I suppose. Flanking strikes gain haste when attacking a foe from behind or the side. So this is cool because, well, it's kind of cool. Gain quickness, lose all endurance, and reduce endurance regen by 50%. It's good and bad. The good thing is it's a stun break. The bad thing is we lose all our endurance and reduce our endurance regen by 50%. But hey, we attack really fast. So yeah, I'm probably not going to ever take this. And then Thrill of the Crime, which is probably the one most people will take. Still strong as ever. When you steal, you and the allies gain Fury, Might, Swiftness. So still probably the best. And then in Master we have Bountiful Theft. Didn't really change, but you may notice if we spec'd into Acrobatics, 120% endurance regen. Pretty good. For 10 seconds. Trickster reduces recharge on tricks. Tricks remove conditions. So this is kind of cool. Because they're categorizing all things like the heals and stuff as different things. I believe one of them became a trick, so this is cool because it reduces that, and it'll remove a condition now. Pressure striking, enemies you interrupt are afflicted with torment, so this is cool because thieves do have a lot of ways to interrupt, between steal or headshot on dagger pistol, or striking an opponent from behind with a sword from stealth, so there's a lot of ways to interrupt people. So in applying torment, not really a thing we've had access too much to as a thief, if at all, so it's pretty cool. It's a new condition for us, so stronger condition builds, but, you know, it's a cool thing. And then in Grandmaster we have Hasten Replenishment. You receive initiative when using a heal. This is pretty cool. Force initiative for healing. Didn't really change, though. Sleight of Hand, still the best. Reduces recharge of steal and dazes. I think this is still the best by far in this line. And then Bewilder and Ambush, the 5 stacks of confusion. So it's basically going to be the same. Condy builds take this, other builds take this. But in addition to these, there were a few changes that Thief is getting just baseline. Like I had mentioned, we're getting the 5% damage that Dagger Training used to give us rolled in baseline, so that's a little more damage on Dagger builds. Another change that they're making that is a little worrying for balance is the extra stacks of Venom trait was removed, and they're rolling it in baseline. This worries me because Bazzy Venom now is going to have 2 charges whenever we prep it, and you think, oh, that's not too bad. Well, it actually is pretty bad because here's how a Thief Initiation is going to go. It's going to be, oh, we steal and apply Bazzy, and then, oh, maybe they stun break because they're really quick about their stun break. Oh, well, too bad. We attack them again and they're Bazzied again. And, oh, if they don't have another stun break, well, we just probably annihilated them in the fight because they have no way to get out of the... They've already taken so much damage just from that initiation with Basilisk Venom that they cannot recover in the fight. Or if you're in the middle of a fight and you have Basilisk Venom proccing, it's probably going to win the fight because if their cooldowns are down and you know that and you go in for a Bazzy, what are they going to do? They're just going to be stunned there for like 2 seconds and they can't do anything about it. And then if you have Improv, well, if you randomly recharge Basilisk Venom, well, you can kind of see where this gets a little crazy. I'm as a Thief main, I'm happy the class is getting stronger. I am. But the way they're making us stronger, I don't think is the correct way. In my opinion, I don't think Venoms should ever have more charges. I think where they are is perfectly fine. If anything, roll that back into a Venom share build thing. There's no reason to give us baseline extra Venoms, because Venoms as they are really strong. It's already a choice to go for them, except for Bazzy. Bazzy is kind of like the one you always end up taking in most builds, but I think Bazzy should not get that extra charge baseline. I think that extra charge, specifically on Bazzy Venom, is way too strong. I do not want it. Like, I don't want it. It makes it not fair to my opponents. And as much as that might be the kind of the Thief thing, like having like an advantage on your opponent, I think that's too much of an advantage. So I do not like that. There were a few other changes that got thrown in baseline, but none of them really mattered as much as that one. So I think that's about it. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them below. I'll give you my thoughts. And like I said, all of these changes that I've talked about, they're all based on just Thief power level. It's not based on any other classes. I know other classes are changing, and maybe it won't be as bad as I think, but specifically looking at the numbers they have now, Thief is going up in power a lot, and I'm really worried what that's going to do to the game. So that'll be that. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on the Thief.